Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Mind Game. Was a particular favorite of mine towards my senior year in college. A Japanese anime where it feels like almost anything can happen at any point in the movie, which is entirely the fun of seeing a movie like Mind Game. Now, Mind Game is about a character named Nishi who wants to be a manga artist, but has kind of squandered his life being shy and timid, especially around this girl he has a huge crush on, Myron, I think. I'm gonna butcher a lot of people's names. Then finds out she is going to marry a big stupid truck driver. She tells him this, and of course he's devastated because he always wanted to marry her. And he goes to a restaurant and meets her, and her fiance shows up, and they're talking for a little bit, and then this football enthusiast or soccer enthusiast, because I'm American, shows up and is very angry with his gangster friend, and he's trying to find the owner of this restaurant who isn't there, and gets very violent, actually shoots Nishi and tries to rape Myron, and then Nishi goes to heaven, comes back to life, but back to when he had the gun on him, and then realizes he needs to not squander life and be so shy, and he fights the guy back, shoots him, takes Myron and her sister in the gangster's car who was with the football enthusiast, and they drive off while the Yakuza chase them, and then while they're over a bridge, drive over the bridge and jump into a whale who just happens to be jumping up then and go into his belly and live in the whale for a majority of the movie. An ongoing theme throughout this film is living life to the fullest. And I've never seen a film reflect that so much, both thematically and technically and artistically, all at the same time. Most films are like, you should live free, and then it's like a very structured Hollywood plot. And you're like, well, don't live that free. But in Mind Game, literally, you never know what exactly is going to happen. It will act very plotted out and structured, and then suddenly there'll be a dance sequence. Suddenly there's an action sequence, and a guy breaks his bone, and then they cut to like, oh, you should have drank your milk, and his mom's like, don't worry, I'll put milk in your food anyway. It feels crazy and fun and phonetic, and like anything is possible. And this film has this idea in it that if you live life to the fullest, anything is possible. And this director directs it like anything is possible. This is directed by Masahiki Yusaha, I think. I don't really know his other work, although I'm such a big fan of this. And he did for the Studio 4 Celsius, I think, who also did Steam Boy. This is the only film I've seen from either of them. I've seen it so many times. I think one of the reasons I loved it so much my senior year of college, which is kind of the end of schooling, the beginning of a lot of possibilities. And not only I liked it, my two roommates liked it. They're kind of the ones who turned me on to it. They saw the premiere. It barely came out in the US, but it played at MoMA for like a week, and they saw it and they're like, we're gonna see it again. It's so amazing. And now I recognize the reason I loved it so much, and we all loved it so much, is because the possibility. There's a real feeling of possibility when you're at that cusp of life, you know, where you're like, man, if I can accomplish fucking anything. You won't, but it's a nice feeling to think. And Mind Game lets you think that. Let me think that when I was graduating college, that like you can make a film and fucking anything could happen. And that's the feeling in Mind Game. There'll be a dance sequence. They'll switch animation styles. This is in no way polished. This is entirely experimental, but also has a narrative to it. It's fun. It goes on too long. It's colorful. It's serious. There's animation styles that'll suddenly pop up and never come back again. They suddenly have this rotoscope style where the animation characters, literally it'll cut to one thing to a different animation style where it shows the faces of the voice actors. An incredible feeling, kind of experience this movie again, because I remember when I first saw it and I was like, you can do that in animation? You can break so many rules? Because it felt like in this film there were no rules. It was just good food. It just felt so kinetic and crazy. And seeing this now, so many years, I mean, I think I saw this first, it was in 2005 when I saw it. It came out in Japan in 2004, and it just like blew my fucking mind. I think, you know, artistically it's so ambitious, but that's what's so much fun about it, because you're never sure where it's gonna go. And I think the main character of Nishi, he was a shy person. I've been shy in my own life, and it kind of makes me think, why hold yourself back? Why sit like, oh, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, when you can live out life, and if you really go out and experience things, and really anything can possibly happen if you can go out and really embrace life. And I think this film really embraces life in a way I don't know if any film has ever done since or before, or very few films have, because it just has this feeling of being alive. It has this feeling of surprising. There's still things I've seen this film 5 or 6 times and it still surprises me. It still enthuses me. When I was at that point, and sure, possibly maybe when we watched this we weren't entirely sober, but when I watch it now, it's such a strong, interesting film, because sure, there's parts that don't work, but I've never seen a director really just throw all caution into the wind and just be like, well, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And it has such an amazing energy to it. And especially for an animated film, where I think animated film, especially, I think more so even now, it's so structured and so like it has to be like this. Even for an anime, I think it's insanely crazy. Most of the reviews of this are just like talking about the experience of the film, because the film is so infectious. It just gets inside. I mean, just talking about it just brings a smile on my face and like makes me feel kind of warm inside, just like the possibility that Mind Game could happen happened. You know, it's just like anytime you're thinking like, man, wouldn't it be cool if a movie suddenly did this and did that and broke this rule and didn't care. And Mind Game doesn't give a shit about anything. It's just glorious in the possibility of it all. It's like that feeling when you're a kid, like when you're like, and this will happen and that'll happen and maybe this and that. And even when you grow up, you're like, oh, well, you can't do this, you know, rules, structure, so forth. Yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but in a lot of ways it is a perfect movie, because if you look at the artistic intent of it, if you look at how it works and the energy of it, you go away from it and you're just talking about like, how is this possible? Like, how many times in your life do you get to see a movie and you're just in awe of the possibility that it exists? This is so crazy, this cult weird movie that a regular audience member couldn't get behind. But the whole theme of the movie is possibility, the possibility of life, the possibility of embracing and experiencing life and going out and doing what you want to do, even if it's entirely stupid. Yeah, I mean, within reason and such. But it doesn't even think about that. It has kind of a childlike view of it. And I can understand why now that was so attractive to me when I was a senior in college. It's kind of funny, because as much as you can describe this movie, there's oftentimes I'm speechless with it, because they're just like almost too much to comprehend. You know, just has that feeling of new school of feature animation where you know, you have to have a structure and a point and something you're saying with it. That's always kind of, I think feature animation has always had this thing where there's an overarching theme to it. It's very good at that, much like feature filmmaking. But it also has this feeling of animated shorts, of early animated shorts, where it was just like a series of animators who would be like, if you watch an old Tom and Jerry, they didn't write it, they just go, okay, Gary, you do this gag, Bob, you do that gag. It would keep going, and they would just have gag after gag after gag, and it was very experimental in that way. And this has a feeling of short animation like that as well. I can feel like the Fleischers and like that experimentation, and the way this pushes its boundaries kind of makes you go like, I don't think feature film could do this. It makes me feel so alive that someone would realize, like, look at the possibility of animation. I know I'm being very Tiny Toon right now. I just love this movie. It is super weird and super insane and doesn't make any sense, but that's the whole point of it. It's a fun movie. It's an infectious movie. It's an amazing movie. I often cite it as one of my favorite films of the last decade. I don't know if it's one of the best. I often used to say it was the best animated film of that decade. That's pretty hard, because that was a pretty amazing decade for animation. But I would definitely put it in like maybe the top 25. Something. I mean, I would rank this film very high, because I just think it's an amazing film. I wish it had come out more in America, but fortunately it is on YouTube with US subtitles. I've wanted to do reviews just of movies I like and wanted to talk about, and kind of just looked back at this film, and it was such a part of my life from back then, from 2005, and it was like before I met my wife, and a lot of the friends I had then I just don't have contact with, unfortunately. I think it reminds me of a time when there was a lot of hope, and the hope is in this movie, that hope of life, that hope of anything is possible in your life. And I think this film reminds me of that, but I think also it also has it in it. And that's an amazing thing to experience. And I'm not putting that on it. It definitely has that in the film. That's part of how it was made. That's part of the artistry behind it and the technical side of it, and you know, the screenplay and everything. I've never read the manga that it's based on. Interestingly enough, the author is named Robin Nishi. I would like to at some point. I've always loved this film, and I was wondering when I watched it today if I would still love it. And there's certain films that when you get older, you don't like them as much as you used to, but maybe I don't like this as much, and maybe it did remind me of something that, you know, was 8 years ago, and I'm definitely a different person since then, and the life I was living then was different, and the people I knew I don't know anymore, and I'm sure they're different as well. It's such an amazing experience and such an infectious experience, regardless of my personal crap that I'm putting in this. It's an amazing film with a lot of possibility, toying with the audience, and it's having a great time doing it. I haven't seen a director have as much fun experimenting. It seemed like he was as entertained as I was watching it, and that's really rare for any sort of a film. You should be open to the possibility of seeing different movies, just like this movie is open to the possibility of experiencing new things, and that's all part of this film, but in a very amazing, not like a stupid, cheesy way, like an amazing, kinetic, drug experimental crazy way that you'll never soon forget, and I will never forget, and I still haven't forgotten. So if you have seen Mind Game and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.